Hey everyone, and thank you for joining this evening. My name is Joshua Morton. I'm the Director of Business Services with Ardent Residential, and I'm joined this evening by my co-host, Christine Kano with Lizega and Johansson.
Hi guys.
A little bit about me. I've been in property management for about 10 years now. 7 of those years working for Ardent in the HOA management sector. I'm pretty passionate about what I do. I work with our managers and assistant managers on more of the internal side of the business, internal operations. But I've managed several properties over the course of my career in the industry, and I love what I do. Christine, if you'll introduce yourself.
Hi all, I'm Chris Cano with Lizzie and Johansson. I'm a partner with their General Services Department. I have been in community association since I think about 2016. And for several of those years, I was actually in the collections department. I believe Josh and I have actually worked together as attorney and property manager for some of our own shared associations. So we're really excited today to kick things off and talk about the hot topic of social medias, the do's and don'ts, because as stated, it can be bad and ugly, but also very beneficial.
Yeah, that is correct. So, what we're going to be discussing tonight, as Chris mentioned, is social media, the good, the bad, and the ugly for your association. There are a lot of pros and there are a lot of cons, and we're definitely going to get into that as the presentation continues. So, let's talk a little bit about social media significance for your association. Um, so there's some positives and negatives of having social media platforms for your community. Positives are information sharing, uplifting posts regarding the association, improvements, accolades for your surrounding neighbors, engagement, neighborly communication, and fellowship is really important for a sense of community. And then potential challenges that social media platforms have for your association. And we're definitely going to talk about that a lot this evening.
That's right. And we'll guide you through how to approach social media strategically and effectively if that's what the association decides to do, and you should respond as a responsible member.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about some pros for social media platforms that you may be using for your association. A few pros are going to be updates and announcements, what's going on in the community, what's upcoming in the community. I know that over the course of my many years of managing associations that I dealt with a lot of issues that resulted in major amounts of communication. And even though the management company or the board may be sending those pieces of communication out to the membership, it's always good to put the communication wherever you can, right? So a social media platform such as Facebook is a great resource for those announcements. Example, I managed a condominium one time that was going through a Google Fiber installation, and there was a lot of communication regarding that. And the management firm, we sent out multiple e-blast and letters in the mail regarding the installation, but I know a lot of folks had questions outside of those notices, and they went to the social media platforms to get those updates. So that's a great one as well.
Sure, it helps for the real-time updates, right, Josh?
Absolutely. Real-time updates are fantastic. The management company or the board may not be able to provide, immediate updates on everything. And so if somebody is aware of things that are going on within the community that are beneficial to the membership as a whole, the social media platform is
yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about this past December in 2022, how everyone's pipe burst. And it would be really helpful in those situations if the association had some sort of social media platform where there was instant communication for people to notify each other and reach homeowners who maybe aren't checking their emails at home while traveling. but also get real-time updates about, hey, what's the status on repairs? But even before then, trying to get in touch with as many homeowners as they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a crazy time. I remember I was at my parents' house on Christmas Day, and the
Oh
call
boy.
day, we had about 20 properties that had major losses due to those pipe bursts. So
Yeah, and social media really helps with those, getting that message out there about emergencies or, like you're saying, big projects for Google Fiber, any other renovations that might be going on in the community, including clubhouses or amenities. So I know for projects that are ongoing, that's super helpful, especially for the newer generation that are plugged in. But do you guys find yourself using it for events and gatherings within your practice?
Yeah, for events and social gatherings, I mean, it's perfect for sending out notices regarding summer pool parties or summer
Mhm.
cookouts or a fall movie in the park. It's also a great platform for notices for town hall meetings, and annual meetings. Um,
That's
even
right.
though the board or the management firm may send out proper notice pursuant to the governing documents for those
I
meetings.
was just about to say that.
Yeah. Even though proper notice does go out, it's always good little reminders to post on the social media platform. Hey, we have an annual meeting this coming Thursday, 7 p.m. at the clubhouse. Just
That's
as
right.
a fresh reminder to the membership, because people do that. We live in these busy day-to-day hustle and bustle schedules, and people forget. But people are tuned in to their
Their
phones.
phones.
I
Yeah,
know, I
it's
get
so
those.
true. I mean, I just think about, I'm sorry, but unless you were a childhood friend, most of my adult friends, you remember their birthdays because you have a notification on your phone. And for that same manner, it's useful to have a notification of, hey, upcoming special meeting or annual meeting, or hey, summer pool party. I know social media can be super beneficial when it's right there and it's instant and it reminds you of things like more than a mailer might do.
Oh, absolutely. And as I mentioned, people are so tuned into their phones and their social media apps. I know I get those screen reports every Sunday that tell me how much time I spend on my phone, and it's a little embarrassing. So we know that folks are maybe more tuned into their social media platforms and maybe checking their mail or their email at times. So that's definitely a great resource. And then also, announcements for emergencies. Such
Like we were
as
kind of talking about.
water and power outages too, right? Like if
Mhm.
the water's out, there could be a main line break, nearby. And so those updates are really, really beneficial. Same with power outages. People will go straight to try to figure out where those issues are coming from. Another great resource is posting positive accolades, college, high school graduations, um, information for kids in the community.
Yeah, it really builds up a sense of community and make sure to notify your fellow members of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, anything positive and uplifting is what these platforms are really intended for. And like I said earlier, we're going to get into the cons and how they can turn a little nasty at times. But the more positive, the better. We live in a society where there's so much negativity that and people go straight to their keyboards when they're frustrated, and
Mhm.
we should change the system there, right? So, instant communication, we kind of touched on that, but it's also a great way for neighbors to connect with other neighbors. You may not have your neighbor's contact information, but see they're a part of the community group. So it's easy to reach out there. And then initiatives within the community, community cleanup days, community garden, or a committee planning event.
Yeah, it's
So
a great platform to bring people together and kind of coordinates for those events.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide, Chris.
Yeah. So community engagement, specifically how social media platforms can promote community engagement and HOA, well, common law HOA, property owners association, and condominiums all are included within that. It's a great platform for sharing ideas, as we've said, and suggestions and feedback. But really, one of the things that I truly like about it is that it creates increased awareness and participation among your younger generation that might normally maybe be too busy or not check their emails or mailers for upcoming events. In addition, it really emphasizes the importance of creating an open space and inclusive environment where all residents feel comfortable sharing their ideas. Well, at least that's what the goal is, to create a comfortable space to share ideas, suggestions, and feedback. One of
Exactly.
the ways, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, one of the ways is to just open up the conversation to get your members involved in decision making in the whole process. It's a collaboration.
Absolutely. You want your membership to have a sense of community, as we mentioned, and you want them to actively participate in community discussions. So that's another great platform to use your social media channels on. Also, feedback mechanisms. You can establish effective feedback channels, such as suggestion boxes or online forums or surveys regarding the association. It provides homeowners with a convenient way to express their thoughts and concerns. So that's a really good use of social media as well.
We talked a little bit already about collaborative committees, and again, you want to check with your attorneys for, sorry, I didn't actually say this, but I was thinking in my head, with committees and collaborations, you want to check with your association attorneys on, what can you do and what can't you do. But it is a great platform for getting people together and building that neighborhood feel. In addition, like we had previously said, it helps build community events and that feedback. But really, you're trying to create a sense of belonging. You're trying to create feedback, input, dialogue, and volunteers. So go ahead and use it. I mean, that's how, when people move to a new neighborhood or a city, they immediately look into groups like who dines together, who reads together. It's the new generational thing to do.
It definitely is. Another thing as it relates to community engagement that we touched on a little bit earlier is community events. Something that you should plan for your association. Summer pool parties, summer cookouts, anything that brings the membership together, to fellowship, block parties, potluck dinners, game nights, even neighborhood cleanup initiatives. Some communities have that, especially that are potentially like in the city limits, can have some debris from the streets that get into the common areas. So community cleanup days are something that I see a lot of communities doing now. Even having a neighborhood watch program. That's something
That's a smart one.
What's that?
I said that's a smart one, actually. You say that because I just thought the other day in my neighborhood we had emails circulated about a possible creepy car approaching young women, children in our neighborhood. So that would be a great forum to share that information, so it'd be like readily available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of communication that Ardent gets as a management firm regarding concerns as it revolves around safety in an association, we get a lot of communication regarding that. And Chris can speak on this. It's not the association's responsibility to
Right.
provide safety mechanisms for the community. But neighborhood watch programs are a great thing that can bring your community together and make them feel more comfortable.
Right.
So
Great.
that's another thing that'd be great for updates in the neighborhood watch program on the social media platforms.
And so, as Josh said, there are so many great benefits to creating community and a sense of belonging. But I think everybody knows there's also difficulties with social media these days. So you want to come to the cons. I mean, people are hesitant to use social media because there is a lot of misinformation and rumors, and some people see it as a platform just to purely vent. That certainly can be the case. We're not saying it's not, but there's a proper way to use it, and it's going to largely be based upon what criteria the association establishes from the get-go. But also, if you can be a responsible member and help harness the good, we can avoid the rumors, because we do know that it should be up to everybody who posts to fact check. If you fail to fact check, it can lead to dissemination of false information, which has its own repercussions, as I would know as an attorney, because you can accidentally be putting information out there that is untrue and you could be sued for it. So you want to be smart about what you're putting in there. I mean, opinions, you can't, there's nothing false about an opinion, but you don't want to put that negativity out there. But if you put false information, you could be leading to misunderstanding or misinformed decisions. Sometimes it might be about, oh, I heard that the association is going to increase our assessments because um, you know, nobody's paying and we have 500 units that aren't paying. If that's not true, that's incorrect. You could be creating panic within your community. And then you could also be starting rumors. So rumors get started and it creates a hostile environment, which can hinder effective decision making from the association board. And really, it's hard to get the membership then to agree on a direction when all they're hearing is a bunch of rumors. So it's going to be largely up to the association's board to kind of establish a baseline. But we'll go through the process more. But I just want to say that in addition to the association, we're looking to members to be fact checking, to reduce any um, ability to create a rumor mill. You want to minimize the negative effects of misinformation, because it does cause conflict. I'm not going to say that going on social media is only good and can only create transparency or not, but it can cause stress and it can lead to bigger issues. And so you do want to consult your association attorney if you're a board on how best to do it if you want to do it. And there are also challenges to addressing false information. I mean, I'm sure what I have encountered will vary from Josh's, but we both know that social media can be the starting point for a lot of false information, right, Josh?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen so many boards get really frustrated with information that homeowners are posting on their Facebook pages or the other social media platforms regarding certain a vast variety of issues, right, that are not factual. And a lot of the times people point fingers, which isn't the best thing to do, because then somebody's circling around trying to figure out who provided certain information, right? And I've also seen
Mhm.
board members get to a point that they resign from being on the board
You feel attacked a lot.
because of the attacks on social
Yeah.
media. And you know what the sad thing is, Chris, is that nobody, well, it's hard to find volunteers to be board members, or and the board members will resign because of this misinformation and the attacks, but then you don't have anybody to serve on your board, so that
I know.
that
And
causes an
just for
issue as well.
everybody's knowledge, for people who might not be aware, community associations are a nonprofit organization in Georgia. And so all of the people who serve on your board, they are volunteers, like Josh said. They don't get paid necessarily to do what they do. It's going to depend on your bylaws, but it's a thankless job, and they have a huge task ahead of them to try to enforce and uphold your governing documents. So we ask for a little gratitude on the side, but one of the things that can help the board's job is to be respectful and mindful of what you're posting in response or even starting to post. Because it does lead to a lot of challenges with the board's duties, and how are they going to quash something like that. Once it gets started, it's hard to stop. But in addition to the rumor mill, there's also issues of privacy. I believe that's what our next slide addresses too.
Yeah, before we jump to that slide, Chris, I want to talk about, the misinformation and rumors that can start on social media and
Yeah.
then get, it can be carried into a more public situation. Like I've seen things begin on a Facebook page that get carried into the annual meetings, and that's not productive. It's not a space to talk about personal issues or certain rumors within the that have gone around. So
Yeah.
we really need to try to stop that from happening before it escalates too far.
Right. But actually, you just made me think, I mean, one of the main differences of posting something on social media versus the actual annual meeting is that you're putting it out there. You're putting something to, I don't want to say pen to paper because it's not pen to paper, but you're putting it out there in the atmosphere in written word, and it cannot be taken away. I mean, you could probably try to pay somebody to scrub it, but it's out there. And as I previously mentioned, once it's out there, and if it is false, you, the posting person, could be liable. The association, depending on what it says. I mean, so again, be mindful of what you're posting, fact check.
Absolutely. So let's jump into the privacy. So social media platforms can definitely compromise privacy and confidentiality within the board members' positions and the membership. So you definitely don't want to share any sensitive information, especially financial details or any legal matters pertaining to the association.
Yes, that's right.
Why don't you talk on that, Chris, since that's kind of your specialty there?
Yeah, so whether it is a board member that's posting, in which case I would say to them, be thoughtful, know that all the information that you have is supposed to be private, because you're learning about people's delinquencies, and you do not want to go sharing that information, especially on a social media platform, as you are an agent of the association. You have a fiduciary duty to put the association first. And so, it might be a private matter where you get upset with somebody, but social media is not the platform for you to post about something. And you should not be sharing any private financial means of someone's delinquency. You should not be getting into addressing someone's violations. While it's not on the same level of somebody's finances, you certainly don't want to. You can speak generally, saying, hey, we've noticed a lot of people have been leaving their trash cans out after garbage pickup day. This is an important reminder of bringing your trash can in after, before, I don't know, what depends on your documents, but maybe it's before 7 a.m. the next day. But it's certainly not appropriate to be addressing, hey, we've noticed that 204 Primary Maple Road has been leaving their trash can out or letting their dog poop. And even if it's a neighbor to neighbor dispute, this is not the appropriate forum. The association will post appropriate methods to get in touch, and it might be by your community association manager. But do not use social media platform to address your personal grievances with the association. Don't talk about, hey, they didn't waive my fines for a violation. That is not appropriate, and it can get you into trouble, especially depending on who it's coming from. But we understand that it's easy to just spout things off on social media, but we ask you to take a moment, kind of like Josh said, where if you're in the heat of the moment, think about it before posting, especially if you represent the board, as in you are a board member, or if you are a committee member, what you say speaks volumes. And so we really want to emphasize the importance of confidentiality and someone's privacy interests. It goes beyond so many different things, but you're less likely to get in trouble if you're more mindful of what you're posting and if you speak generally. And if you're not sure, ask your community association attorney if you're the association. We understand social media can also create unauthorized access to confidential board discussions and decisions. Josh, can you share a little bit about your experience and what you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen board members, especially newer board members that recently joined, at least recently got elected, or they or they were placed on the board, and then they didn't know that closed session, executive session meeting minutes were private meeting minutes.
Oh
And
no!
yeah,
It
yeah,
sounds like they need a little tutorial with their attorney. We,
yeah,
by
and
the way, do
they
that because
posted them on their either their community website that they were managing or their social media platform. So
oh
that's a
no.
that's a big no-no. That's definitely confidential information that's board privy only.
Yes.
Yeah, and going into that kind of goes into the potential leaks of private conversations. Those executive session meeting minutes that the board has, that is regarding
Mm.
personal homeowner accounts, that that don't need to be sent to the entire membership. It's nobody else's business. It's something that the board is actively working on with the management firm, or the and or the homeowner directly. So that's a big one right there. I've seen that happen on the 2 or 3 occasions, and we just definitely want to make sure we're careful with what documentation that's being posted on those social media platforms.
That's
Um,
right. And just as a note, for depending on what social media platform the association decides to use, there are filters that can be applied so someone's post won't be automatic and it requires someone's from the association to review it. And maybe we'll discuss that a little bit more later, but there are methods to try to curb this sort of issue with privacy and confidentiality. Um, but it definitely can open the door to legal and ethical concerns. And so, I mean, some of the legal ones might be privacy breaches. You could be talking about copyright infringement, if somebody's posting something on their own behalf, or we could be talking about defamation is when you're saying something that's untrue about somebody. So all of those can lead to lawsuits, and you want to be very thoughtful about what you're putting out there. I know we say thoughtful, respectful, but it's kind of like what I say to my young children, which is think about what you're doing first.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to what you were saying about those privacy settings, that's definitely beneficial. I have seen a lot of board members though that don't want any part of the social media platforms just because of what they've turned
Mhm.
into. But it's highly
Mhm.
advised that a board member, monitors the post, or have a social media committee member monitoring those posts, because they can get pretty out of hand. I've had boards and homeowners ask me to join their social media pages, and I've said absolutely not, because I know what
That's
they
funny.
contain most of the time.
You're like, I do not want to be in charge of monitoring it. It is a full-time job.
Right, right. And again, that would fall on the board or a committee member to monitor those posts.
Yeah.
Something like a social media platform is typically outside of a management company scope. So definitely keep that in mind, that you should be monitoring those posts, because
Yes.
you don't want just any homeowner, willy-nilly posting every complaint or concern that they have. And uh, so
Well,
yeah,
yeah, and
I've seen some
that's a
funny
great
examples.
opportunity to remind members and homeowners that there are proper forums to address their personal concerns. Again, I know I said it before, but usually it's through email to a board email address or community manager address, not through something that's public. And that includes attaching anything that might be questionable. But I know accidents happen, and if something like that does occur, you go seek legal counsel, or even your management firm can advise you on the preliminary basis. But Once you put it out there, you can't take it back. And Josh is too busy to monitor your social media.
Yeah, you can't take it back once you put it out there. And the first step is, if you do have a concern that is personal in nature, instead of going and posting it to kind of stir the pot, reach out to your HOA management firm if you have a management company. If you don't have a management company, reach out to your board of directors. And I'm sure they would happily assist you without it escalating any further on a public platform, because nobody wants to deal with other people's personal issues on social media.
Yeah.
Let's jump into conflict. So social media platforms definitely contribute to conflict, as we've kind of discussed. Any sort of debate that can escalate quickly should be avoided at all costs. There's no reason to go back and forth with your neighbors on something so silly. You live in a community, you live in an association, and you want to make it an enjoyable place to live. And if you constantly have negativity or discussions and debates with your neighbors about how you feel personally about something that's not on a positive spectrum, it can just cause the association to the membership to feel miserable. I've seen a lot of people, due to the social media platforms and some of the negative content that's been posted on them, sell their homes because they don't feel like it's very neighborly. They don't feel
that's such a shame.
So definitely just try to avoid, anything that would cause a debate at all costs.
Yeah, and so where the association is concerned, I would say try to emphasize the importance of maintaining a respectful and constructive dialogue. We're looking for positive, inclusive environment, not stomping ground for like crossfire. And unless you can keep it really, PC, and it's okay to have a little bit of discourse, but I think it's really going to be it's going to be up to the association to de-escalate those debates when they see it getting heated. I mean, shut down that discussion, take down those posts.
Absolutely. And that kind of circles back into, make sure you have somebody monitoring the pages, especially somebody that's on the board of directors or somebody that's on a social media committee. And we'll get into kind of high level guidelines for what social media pages should have in a bit. But definitely monitor. If you don't monitor, it'll get out of hand very quickly. Also, no disrespectful comments or hostility, especially against your board members. Like we talked about early on, board members
voluntary position,
and it's a very selfless position to be put in. Like Chris said, they don't get paid depending on their bylaws. I've been in the industry for quite some time now, and I've never seen bylaws that state that board members get paid. So it's very rare.
Yeah, so let's just give it up. A round of applause.
Yes, a round of applause for board members. I mean, very selfless job, having to spend hours of their weeks and assisting the association with certain things. And if they have a management
company, do encourage you to give shout outs to people if you see them doing a great job and being responsive to you, if that's what you want to do. It's kind of like, if you've got nothing good to say, don't say it. I mean, I'm not saying don't say it for sure here, but find a very productive way to express it that won't bring in anything personal.
Absolutely. And, I love when I've done board meetings in the past that include the membership, such as annual or town hall meetings, where the membership starts thanking the board because it's such a rare thing. It's so rare for the membership to stand up and applaud the board for their hard work and their time, because it's not something that gets a lot of praise. I'll tell you that.
That's so true. I mean, I honestly will take time when I encounter really responsive boards who also have put a lot of time, energy, and thought, and they're just not willy-nilly, I always stop and I'm like, thank you for what you do. You make my job easier as the attorney, makes your job easier as the manager. But really, it's because you know the homeowners, if it goes smoothly, it's what they expect. So that it's really hard for someone to stop and be like, thank you. Also, sometimes you don't even know who's on your board. But social media is a great way for you to share that information.
Absolutely. Jumping into reinforcing bias and creating division, that's something that we want to avoid as well. There shouldn't be bias to certain parts of the community. There shouldn't be bias to certain folks living in the community. It should be a completely neutral environment. For example, I've seen homeowners that live in townhome associations that are biased about the common area by their home, and they want it to be perfect. And it may not be perfect. And so they go to the social media platforms to talk about that. But you should always, again, come to your management company, go to your board if you have a personal opinion about certain things within the community, or if you want a resolution on something. Let's not go straight to those socials. Oops, sorry about that. Let's see. Another thing is with the conflict, it's going to be difficult in achieving any decision making. And I know Chris touched on that a little bit ago, but if there's a ton of back and forth and a ton of negativity about surrounding a topic, such as an amendment, let's say there's a leasing amendment and there's a bunch of back and forth about it, it could cause, that amendment not to pass. If the board did not think that an amendment for something in the association was beneficial to the membership as a whole, they would have never spent the time to produce the amendment for their membership. So
yes, that is so true.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen so many times where these boards have worked effortlessly, especially with the attorney and the management firm, to tee up these amendments and spend a lot of money. I mean, they're not free to type up, right, Chris?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And one of the things that people often overlook, I briefly mentioned it, but these board members have an obligation to put the association first. They have to act in the best interest of the association. So when they push these amendments through, they're really thinking, well, how do we keep it a residential feel? How do we prevent people from constantly using the community as a short-term rental, or to have only other institutions buy in? So really, while a lot of people might not like everything that's going on in the community, your association is working hard, and these board members are doing it for the benefit of the whole. And so if you can help them, even on a small level with the social media, keep it focused and keep it productive, that would help the associations.
Indeed. So let's talk about, conflicts arising and how those conflicts can be resolved. So let's promote conflict resolution techniques, and we should encourage boards and homeowners to seek peaceful resolution. So, like, if something is posted on Facebook or any social platform, and let's say the committee member or board member removes the post, but so the homeowner still needs an answer. There needs to be ways, for the board management firm to communicate effectively with those folks posting on a reasonable level, right? So you might want to send them an email or send them a private message trying to assist them outside of that public post. So definitely just try to provide a peaceful response and keep it as positive as possible. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, let's talk about the social policies, what they should hold at a minimum. So you definitely want to define and limit who has access to the media site. So don't give access to your friends.
Should be limited to the members.
It needs to be members only. And I know Facebook has a verification process. I know if I want to join a certain group on Facebook, that it can populate a list of questions. What's your name? What's your address? How long have you lived in the community? So you can set those parameters up before the page is public, or you can even edit the settings on that page.
Yeah, and that actually goes to something that I want association boards to be thoughtful on. Again, I know I'm overusing the word thoughtful, but I can't emphasize it more when you talk to social media. But it's choosing what platform you want to use, because certain platforms are going to be harder to curb, not the access, but what's posted, because we can control who can post on certain things, but also whether someone can respond. I believe platforms like social media, Facebook, you can curb like whether somebody can respond to you or not, or you're just the person posting. So boards should be thinking, do you want people to be responding, or is it a post where you just want to be giving updates and it's more informational and quick live time updates, like on a project? You don't really need feedback for that necessarily, but you want to think about who's going to have the ability to speak, so to say, on these platforms, not just who's going to post, but are you going to allow people to respond?
Yes, and I've seen boards that have community WhatsApp groups, which
Yeah. Oh gosh.
never
Hard to curb.
because you would never get any sleep seeing all of the posts and messages. So yeah, that goes back to controlling what platforms you're actually using for your association. WhatsApp doesn't have a ton of restrictions when it comes to who can post. If you're in the group, you can post whatever you want. So
Yeah.
definitely be mindful of that. And again, no, don't express any negative or despairing comments. Keep it as positive as possible. You don't want to shame anybody. Like Chris has said, when you put it out there, it stays out there. Even if it's deleted, it could have gotten screenshotted or something.
Yes.
They could have it in a file on their computer and they want to use it against you. So definitely keep away from that.
Yeah, so when you're, as an association, creating your social media, if you choose to go towards social media, you're going to create a policy that addresses all of this, that says, prohibiting negative, disparaging comments, prohibiting publication of confidential, embarrassing information. You're going to internally decide who's going to monitor and manage it, but the association should be thinking about what are the goals, what are the needs, what are your preferences and expectations, so you can help relay that to your membership. I mean, your goals and your needs are going to help shape how you decide who can speak on these platforms and which platform you use. But if you have certain expectations, you need to relay that very clearly in a policy to your membership. And again, your management company as well as your attorney can help you put that out there. But part of it definitely should say no negative comments and disparaging comments, no sharing of confidential, embarrassing information, photos included.
Yeah, I this was a couple of years ago, but I was working with the board who had security cameras all around and I'm getting a little chuckle here. They had security cameras around their community, and one of the members publicly relieved himself and behind one of the townhomes, and they took the footage and they posted it on their Facebook page. I'll never forget it. I'll never get it. So don't do that. No reason to embarrass anybody. It's definitely not the place. If a homeowner violated any sort of rule within the community, then we address that with them directly. Let's not publicly shame anybody. Okay.
Yeah, wow, that is, oh my word. So yes,
Yeah.
it's,
Oh my word is right. I
I
got
mean,
the
it's,
email with the picture and I was like, this is a first and I hope it's a last.
oh my gosh. Well, so you want to be mindful about what you post, but don't be using anything that you obtain in your position as a board. That's some free general legal advice that is kind of just not anything specific to what an attorney would tell you. But
Yeah,
you do
don't use
want
your power as a board member to, to post something like that.
to,
Exactly.
that's right. And as a board, like we discussed, you want to know who's going to be the moderator and how are you going to respond to negative feedback? How are you going to remove negative comments? I mean, how often are you going to check and monitor to even find those? Because you need to have a quick response with social media. And so you need to think about in part of your policy, what are you going to do beyond remove those negative posts? Are you going to also deny access to individuals who fail to respect the terms? Because um, you need to be consistent. You don't want to be using any selective favoritism or enforcement against somebody. I mean, it's not a violation necessarily. It depends on your documents, which is what attorneys are always going to say to you. It depends, but you want to be consistent. How you treat one person who does something negatively on your social media platform should be consistent with how you treat the next person. You don't want to allow somebody to keep one comment because you're like, well, that's kind of true, or and not remove that but allow but sorry but remove another person's comment because you're like, oh, that was about me personally. So consistency matters, and you want to establish it in a policy, and that will help enforce consistency. You also want to establish procedures for screening content. Like I said, how often are you going to do it? How are you going to let somebody publish it automatically, or is there a filter system? It's going to vary from platform to platform, but putting it down in a policy will help establish um, consistency and also set expectations for your members as well as your board members. And that can be also discussed behind closed doors before you get to the public forum of, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, which maybe not the best choice given there's no filter on those.
Yeah. And so the next slide is going to be just an example of a social media policy, which kind of recaps what we just discussed. So we don't have to read this verbatim. However, if your association is in need of a social media policy, reach out to your management company, reach out to your attorney, and they can easily get that information over to you. And this can be publicly posted, it can be pinned on your social platforms.
Mhm.
Just high level, no vulgar language, no inappropriate images, no personal attacks or comments that promote discrimination. Obviously, no spam or advocating illegal activity. Political discussions, copyrights and trademarks, and confidential information. Just, we definitely want to refrain from any of those high level dot points. And, the board can add more, you can remove certain things, whatever, fits and tailors your association and your membership is what should be posted. But, just as a quick example, I wanted to include this on here so you could see what other associations are using as a guideline. All right,
All right, that's
so
awesome. Yeah.
to wrap it up here, we're going to talk about just a recap of the do's and the don'ts. So the takeaways here: encourage positive and respectful communication. Share updates and announcements. Use the platform as a positive thing. Highlight achievements, respond promptly and professionally. Don't leave anybody hanging. If somebody does post something, maybe it wasn't monitored and it was automatically posted. Still, make sure you reach out to that person and give them a proper response and a professional response. You don't want to be nasty in responding because it's not a good look on the board or the
Mhm.
association as a whole. I've seen board members, they do tend to get a little hot sometimes. when responding to certain things, especially maybe if they've answered it a few times. Just be patient when you're responding to folks. Definitely promote community involvement. Fellowship and community engagement is super important. You want to feel neighborly. We live in times where it's not the 50s anymore. It's not the 60s. Folks don't wave at each other.
We're not sharing lemonade on a porch. What?
I know. I kind of wish we were, but we're not in those times anymore. So just be as friendly as possible, because there's so much negative that goes around each day, and you don't want to come home and feel like you're in a negative environment in your own community. Especially, it's your biggest investment, right? You want to feel like it's a good place to be. And you just foster a sense of community again. Just wave at your neighbors, even if it's on social media, but share stories, photos, and showcase interest and talents, and achievements for the members in your association.
Yeah, so while there's a lot of do's, as we've also discussed, there's a lot of don'ts. Please don't engage in personal attacks or harassment. Social media for the association is not intended for that purpose. So let's avoid, like we previously discussed, offensive, derogatory language towards residents or board members or anybody in the community who is a stakeholder. Try to maintain a professional, respectful tone. I know a lot of people are working adults, so let's use the same language you would use to a client or a colleague from the workforce to your members, your fellow residents. Do not also share confidential, sensitive information about yourself or others that you know about. It's just not going to lead anywhere good. As an attorney, I can tell you, you are opening the door to liability by doing any of that. So if it's private, if it's sensitive, it's questionable, let's just keep it to yourself. Don't engage in any political or religious discussion on the association's platform. This is not the platform to be talking about that. This is intended for them to share ideas and give productive feedback, and not a platform for personal ideology. There is a place for that, but the association's social media is not intended for that purpose. Do not share inappropriate and irrelevant content. Again, there is a purpose for the association's platform. Let's focus in on that. By doing it, it's much more efficient and it's much more effective. When people clutter it with things that don't add to the conversation, then it really takes away from someone's experience. People just drop out of the thread. They don't provide input because they're getting blasted by somebody else's, rants sometimes. Don't share inappropriate content that, like, again, might lead you to trouble. Be thoughtful, be respectful. I can't say that enough. And please do not ignore user feedback when it can actively add to the conversation where there are concerns. You might avoid dismissing or ignoring their input, and they can lead to a breakdown in communication and trust. The goal and the intent of social media for an association is to build and foster community, and that does mean acknowledging people. But again, to the people who post it, it means being respectful and focus in on what the purpose is, and so the communication can be productive dialogue. With breakdowns, it's usually because one party or another is not posting something appropriate or the person's not being responded to. So we as a community really need to work together. We all need to play a role, and it doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but we certainly ask that you be considerate of others.
Thanks, Christine. All right, moving on to questions, but it doesn't look like we have any. So
well, let's talk really quickly, Josh. What are some of the things that you might do or advise a board on if somebody does post something negative? Do you talk to them beforehand about how they should approach it, or do you usually do a lot more on the back end?
So typically, from the management side, we don't have too much involvement with social media pages unless it's brought to our attention.
Okay.
That is something that the board or a social media committee member will be monitoring. However, if the board does bring something to our attention and ask us our opinion on it, then we give them the guidance. If it's something that is derogatory in nature or on the list of the don'ts under the takeaways, we request them remove the post and we can handle it offline in a different personal platform instead of a public platform.
Right.
So that would be my biggest advice. If there's anything that's posted publicly that's not beneficial to the association, let's just go ahead and get that removed, and we can handle it offline.
Yeah, case by case basis.
Yeah, it's definitely case by case.
I was just wondering because by the time it gets to me, the attorneys, it's usually a hot mess because like I said, it opens the door to defamation, it opens the door to copyright issues. So since we don't have more questions, I just want to wrap it up and say social media can be a valuable asset for associations if used wisely and responsibly. By following some of the tips that we've discussed here, associations can really leverage the potential of social media and enhance their communication and engagement and outreach with their members. But if not used wisely and thoughtfully, then it does create I would say, a breeding ground for what we talked about, rumors, misinformation, a lot of word slinging that's just not nice. So before choosing to do social media, feel free to review what Josh has posted as an example. Feel free to reach out to your manager. Feel free to reach out to your attorney, because sometimes the best advice might be, hey, less is more. Doesn't mean don't use social media, but less can be more. So just think about what are your goals, think about what are your expectations before opening that door.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely, make sure you're making the right decision prior to having one of those social media platforms. Because, it can, like we discussed, it can be either a positive experience or a negative experience. It's what the board and the community make it at the end of the day. And we always strive to make things positive. Well, with that, I want to say thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Christine. I do appreciate you being a part of this evening and your
Loved it.
feedback. So, yeah, thank you for your time, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.